All right, so today we were talking a little bit in class about volumes. We've been talking about three-dimensional shapes, and we were looking at identifying different aspects of them, like identifying the base. And then today we're looking at how can we use that to figure out some actual mathematical information about them. So we're looking at volume. This first one we're going to look at rectangular prisms. Okay, so we've got a rectangular prism right here. Okay, we can see that it's a rectangular prism. It has some bases, and with the prisms we can kind of call a couple different things bases, but we'll just call the bottom piece down there, and we can call the top piece the bases. And so those are, we can see they're parallel to each other, they're congruent, they're both sort of a 10 by 10. We've got our width of 10, our depth of 10, our height of 4. We wrote that there and here. So we want to figure out the volume. That's kind of the space inside. We want to think, if we want to try to fill this up, how many little centimeter things go in there? So we're going to use some pieces to kind of start off with. So if we're thinking about centimeters, so we can use just these normal centimeter cubes. So if I imagine I was trying to kind of build this out, right, I would probably start by laying out a line of 10 pieces. And ideally it would be a straight line. We'd see that would kind of fill out maybe that first little row right there. Like I could kind of imagine it kind of filled in just like a little tiny bit. But I've got a lot more to fill in. So to make our life easier, we'll just sort of push those aside, and we'll just say, all right, so we're going to lay this, we're going to pretend like this is my shape, and I'm going to take this 10, I'm going to put it flat on here, and this is 10 by 10, kind of like this is 10 by 10. So we can now see, we've kind of looked at the area of the base. Now the area of the base, that would be the width times the depth, okay, and that would tell us that this bottom square piece, if we filled it in, different color, we could fill it in kind of, we could fill it in, and it's kind of this piece right here. And so we've kind of shaded in, we could say we've got like one chunk filled in, one layer. But we notice there's a lot more space still inside this. And we can think about it almost now that we've got the base, how many stacks of these am I going to have to need? Now I've got one stack right here. That's about that is 1 centimeter. But I have 4 centimeters worth of them. So I could think, well, I've got 10 by 10. This base was 100. Right? So if I found the area of the base, 10 times 10, that gives us 100. 100 centimeters squared. That's the area of the base. But I'm going to need 4 of these. So I could get a second one, a third one, and a fourth one. So now we kind of have a stack that is 4 tall, 10 deep, and 10 wide. We can see that this really just means area of the base 100 times 4, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to do 100 times 4, and we'll see that this is 400 centimeters, and now we're going to do cubed because that's what we use for volume. So this kind of leads us to then our formula for figuring out the volume of a rectangular prism, right? Because that filled up the whole thing. So we're going to do essentially our volume, and this is going to be our volume formula for most shapes, is really going to be the area of the base. Put that in parentheses, and we're going to multiply that by the height. Now in this particular problem, that means we're going to do the width times the depth. That told us the area of that base part right there. So I'm just going to say width times depth. And then once I find that, I'm just going to multiply it by the height. That's going to tell me, in this case, we had a volume of 400 cubic centimeters. Now, we could look at another one real quick. I'll just sketch one out. This might not be to scale. We'll just kind of say it like this, and maybe it's a really deep one. Okay, so we'll say this is our rectangular prism. Okay, so we want to find the area of the base, and we'll say that this is maybe like 5, and down here this is a little bit bigger. We'll say this is maybe 8, say meters for that. And then we'll say deep, let's say it's like, well, we'll say 10. It's probably a little more than that, but that'll make our math a little easier. So let's say you get a shape 5 by 8 by 10. We're going to find the area of the base first. That's just going to be the width times the depth. Okay, so I could put volume equals 8 times 10 put those in parentheses, and then I'm going to multiply that by the height, how many stacks of those I would have. So if I had an 8 by 10, filled it in, that would take 80. I would need 5 stacks of 80 up and down, so times 5. Do our math, that gives us 80 times 5, or our volume is going to equal 400 meters cubed. So that's really how we're finding volume of prisms. Really, area of the base times the height. We could also even just think of it as you really just multiply those three numbers, but it's important to understand where we can multiply all three because it's the area of the base times the height, and that's going to help us for solving other kinds of problems.